So we're starting recording. For today's meeting, we are honored to have joining us Rich Mironov from all the way from Portland. Rich is a very experienced Silicon Valley product management expert and practitioner. Still do the smoke jumping, Rich, or you?
On occasion, although the last few have been pretty challenging, so I ask myself that question each time.
So Rich will often smoke jump into organizations that are in between their chief product officers. And today we're going to do an Ask Me Anything with Rich regarding working with sales and executives. So Rich is going to do a few kind of opening remarks, but if you have any questions that you would like us to cover, go ahead and put those in the chat and I will work them into the conversation. And with that said, Rich, if you want to go ahead and take it away and any explaining anything else about your background, and go ahead and
Sure.
open it up.
Thanks. And yeah, so, Portland is actually a suburb of Des Moines. It's just an outer suburb. So good. And you can actually see behind me, there's some artifacts here. I've been in the game pretty long. I had my first product management job in the middle 80s. So for anybody who thought product management was new, not so much. You can see a late 80s Macintosh back there. That's the first one that had a hard drive, 10 megabytes. And then on the other side, we've got a manual typewriter, a hand cranked adding machine, and a Rolodex, just in case anybody's old enough to know what any of those things are. And then on the far corner, you can see a rotary dial phone way back. I don't know if you swipe up or we're still working on that. Anyway, so I've been in the game a long time. Last 20 years, I've been an independent. I do drop into companies sometimes to run the product teams, and I do a lot of coaching of heads of product. So less about the individual atomic pieces, the transactional pieces of how we are product managers. I spend a lot more of my time worrying about how we get the rest of the executive team on board and how we either have or stick with a strategy just for the fun of it. And in particular, we're going to be talking about enterprise customers. It's very different, I think, than folks who are in a consumer-oriented space. So 3 points I wanted to make, and then we'll open it up for everybody, just to sort of frame up what I mean by enterprise and what the couple of core issues often are. So if you're in the tech space and you're selling consumer products, let's think of things that are between $10 and $100 one time or per year. You're probably trying to sign up 10,000 customers a quarter, right? If you're in the small to medium business space, you're probably selling products that are, let's say, $5,000 a year or less. And then you're having to sign up thousands of small businesses in order to be in a business at all, and make money. Enterprise tends to be upstream of that. So I would say anything that's, say, $25,000 a year and up is probably enterprise and has a few features. One is that usually the buyer is not the user. There's somebody with a VP title or a CFO title or something else who has to sign off on this, who's never, ever, ever going to use your stuff and is divorced from the people who actually do the day-to-day. Second point I'd make is if you're in an enterprise company, there's probably 5 or 10 deals or some number like that that really matter to the company that are big. And I know, if you're in that case, that your CEO follows every one of those deals every week and gets an update from sales, knows them by name. And if there's an issue, the issue goes directly from the sales team to the CEO. So that's exactly the opposite of the consumer space, where we're perfectly happy to run some experiment that might make 1,000 people unhappy because there's 100,000 other ones. But enterprise companies get very, very sensitive around their big customers because that's all they have, and losing one is a big deal. So one should expect a different set of politics and thinking in the executive suite than if you're at a consumer company. And the last thing before we open this up is, let's think about the enterprise sales teams, because that's where it all happens. And a useful fact here is that sales teams do what we pay them to do, not what we want them to do. So if the comp plan, for instance, encourages them to sell a lot of professional services, I'm pretty sure that's going to want to be what they want to do, regardless of how much we as product folks think that's a bad idea or lecture them or scold them, right? the sales teams, they're very skilled at escalations. They're very skilled at figuring out who's going to sign for things. They know how to get stuff done in organizations. So the dynamic is very, very different in an enterprise company that has enterprise sales reps than any of us who've been in consumer companies where, you're selling.
It's a nice dramatic pause for effect. I'm really appreciating it.
Yeah, we lost his audio. Did we lose your audio, Rich?
Yeah, he's frozen for me too. Video too. Oh. Maybe not.
I seem to be having some internet issues here, but we're going to roll ahead. And then the last thing I'm pasting into the chat box here. Here's a talk I recorded a couple of years ago, which is on this same topic. So to the extent that you want to hear it, and we'll get to different things in the Q&A and the AMA than in that talk, then there's another resource for you with some slides. Okay, 10 minutes passed. We've done introductions. Fire when ready.
You're ready for these questions. And again, if anyone we do have a couple of preloaded questions. But if you have any questions for Rich, go ahead and put them in the chat and I will work them into the overall flow of the conversation. So Rich, first question I had, kind of going on that, like some of the things you talked about. And so this is probably more in the enterprise space or definitely in a business to business space. What are your suggestions for product folks who are wanting to get access to their current customers for research discussions, and their prime mode to do that is through the sales folks?
Right, and let's parse that a little bit, because there's really a couple or three questions hidden in there, right? So one is, instead of talking to customers, should we just read the notes that the salespeople put into Salesforce or the CRM or wherever they're putting them? Quick hint: salespeople ask a lot of really interesting questions, but they almost never ask the questions that we as product folks want answers to, right? So the response that says, "Oh, we talk to customers all the time, we put our notes into Salesforce," is a non-answer, right? Sorry, and I think that's not obvious to salespeople, and it's certainly not obvious to sales management that the question set we have is entirely different, right? Scenario before we try to fix it. So, as a enterprise salesperson, I really don't want some product manager, probably who's junior and doesn't know how to handle big accounts and is going to step all over themselves with all kinds of weird questions, getting in the way of closing a deal or renewing a customer that's coming up for renewal. Right now, most salespeople have had some bad experience with a product manager somewhere back where they said something odd like, "Oh, that feature that the sales team promised you isn't on the roadmap." Now, it may be true, but there's nicer ways to say that, and you probably want to have had that out with the sales team rather than directly with the customer. So sales folks are worried that we're going to screw it up, right? And that's, whether that's legitimate or not doesn't matter, because it's real. So given that, we're going to have to figure out how to engineer this so that we get to talk directly to real users and real buyers around the sales team. So let's recast this as a discussion between me as the head of product and the VP of sales, because I'm never going to convince each of the sales reps in my company to do the thing I want. They're too busy. They're not interested in it. It's against their interests, right? So if we're going to fix this problem, we're going to fix this at the executive level. And we're going to make some concessions on each side. And so the concession I usually make is, we're going to exclude from these research or discovery or interview calls anybody who's within a month or two of renewals, right? Assuming we're in the SaaS model, because the sales team's putting a lot of energy into them right now and they don't want me to get screwed up, right? And we're probably going to not talk with anybody who's in the late stages of first-time signups, because we have no business in there, right? But turns out in the year between when they sign up and when they're renewing, there's probably about 9 months worth of sales teams are mostly ignoring them except for their quarterly call. And as long as we are behaved, we can get in there. Second thing I usually offer is that we'll take good notes. We'll pass the notes on to the sales team if they want them. We won't keep any secrets. Sales folks are allowed to join the call, but only if they're on mute and don't say anything. Because of course, at every moment, the sales team is going to explain why my question isn't something they need to answer. Oh, we don't need that feature, right? And then, other things we're probably going to say is, we're going to present a variety of futures, but we're going to be really careful not to promise that any of them are things we're actually going to do, right? We're not going to make commitments on the call. Again, something salespeople are worried about. We're likely to bring forward 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 ideas, and we want them to rate them or score them or react. But we're going to go out of our way not to make any promises and to position the call as a research call, not a commitment call. On the other side, what we need our sales folks to do, one is we need to get briefed on the account, because if there's issues, we want to avoid them or not get in trouble, right? We probably want to read those Salesforce notes to see what's going on. And we want to sort of comfort them that we're not going to screw it up, right? In return, what do the sales folks get? Because I don't know about you, but most salespeople lead with the question of, why do I care? What do I get? How is this going to make life better for me? And this research calls don't really help there much. They probably shouldn't, right? So what are the things that it's a sales call? Somebody want to break in with an answer here?
You broke out there, so you might want to back up a couple of words and restate what you just said.
Research calls or discovery or validation calls, and there's sales calls. So somebody help me, tell me how we know if it's a sales call.
Anybody have any thoughts?
If you have one client on the phone and you're trying and they're pitching features just for them.
I would say maybe there's an ask at the end.
Of course. By the way, who set up the call? Sales, okay? So I know it's a sales call. If the sales team reached out to me and said, we need you on a call with big customer, right? We got a call with John Deere in 2 weeks. And what they really want to know about is topic X, right? How we're applying machine learning to predicting when it's time to replace parts in the tractors, right? If the sales team organizes the call and they give me an assignment and they brief me on it, it's a sales call. And so really important that I behave myself, that I answer questions that they've set up for me. I'm up and enthusiastic. And whenever there's a hard question about pricing or closure or sign-offs, I kick that back to the sales team. That's what they expect from me. And so as the head of product, I get to say to the head of sales, my product managers work pretty hard and we're on a call almost every week with your customers, helping put money in your people's pockets. I think it's fair trade for letting us talk to customers and learning things and building the right product. Notice I didn't quite state the else case here of going to sit on our hands and not help close deals, because we're never really going to do that. But we're calling out the pro quo, right? And we're doing it in sales terms, because the only thing they really care about at the end of the day is, are we helping them sell? So that was kind of a long answer, but let me catch my breath and see how we did.
All right. Thanks a lot, Rich. You may want to think about turning your camera off. Maybe that'll save on some bandwidth.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what the bandwidth issue here is, but okay, let's try camera off a bit.
Yeah.
My office manager will come up, by the way.
So kind of going a little bit on that last topic, I got a couple questions dealing with roadmaps and roadmap selling. So I'm going to combine these two questions together, and you may still want to split them apart. So what's your opinion on road mapping a feature to close a big deal? And what's the best way for sales and product to work together in presenting roadmaps to customers?
So I'm very leery of closing deals based on one feature that wasn't on the roadmap for a variety of reasons. One, deal and us is this one feature. It's almost never true. So, it means doing some independent discovery. The sales team will never get the specs right. The sales team will never communicate the use case right. It's not their job. And so if we're going to throw something on the roadmap that wasn't there before, first of all, that's an executive committee call, because inevitably, no matter what everybody lies to you about, inevitably, we're going to postpone or delete or cancel something else to make room for this feature. And every executive will tell you that's not true, but it's always true, right? So rather than ask the question of should we add this feature to the roadmap, which is the wrong question, I like the question that says, which of these two other projects, which we've announced to the company and the customers and the world and are underway and are going to deliver tens of millions of dollars of revenue to our company, should we delete or postpone to make room for this? Because suddenly we're talking in sales language now, right? To close a $500,000 deal by postponing an update that's going to put 10 million into our renewal stream is a bad business choice. And so if we as product folks let the salespeople talk money and us only talk tech, then we're showing up to the gunfight without a gun, right? So we have to rough size the thing we're going to delete or postpone in money terms so we can present a real alternative back to the executive team, right? Important. And then, sometimes it's a thing that was already on the roadmap. It's just a quarter or two out and we're just shuffling things. I'm much happier with that. So we might pull something forward, but again, we're going to push something back. So this idea that we're making a yes/no decision is wrong. It's an exclusive or decision between doing one thing and doing the other things we planned. Really important. Maybe it's a big enough deal, right? Maybe that makes perfect sense, but product and engineering must do their own sizing. I don't know if you've heard this, but most sales reps tell me that the thing they need is pretty simple and it's only going to take 10 lines of code and there's room in the current sprint and no worries, right? I got a bridge I want to sell you. So if product and engineering haven't done the homework to find out if it's possible, to see what we're going to push to do, by the way, the other thing sales reps always tell me is everybody wants this. Mostly not true, but sometimes it is. So I, as a product manager, need to go out and do a little bit of market research and do a little bit of sizing with my team to find out what it is. Otherwise, we are inviting disaster. Again, I don't know about you folks, but I rarely find a roadmap that has empty space in it. So good. And then where else was I going to go with that? One thing we might do at the executive level, if you have a company that has this problem, I've pitched to a lot of CEOs that we should change the comp plan slightly, just tiny, slight change. If a sales rep bids a deal that includes a feature that's not on the roadmap and doesn't have approval from product and engineering, the first time we don't pay them for the deal, and the second time we fire them. Again, back to see at the top of the hour, sales reps will do whatever it takes to close a deal if there's no punishment. So we have to think about their incentive structure, not just how we're going to convince them that gravity's the law. Pause.
All right. So we're going to shift it up a little bit, but not too much. So we're going to kind of bring in the other executives here for a minute. So question was asked, on a practical level, what does it look like for a product manager to manage up to senior leadership?
Okay, and I assume we're talking generically senior leadership, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a key part of our jobs. if we're not managing up, then we're getting a lot of random push down decisions that may not make much sense, right? So let's think about the different kinds of managing up we have to do. One, I'll call merchandising. So merchandising is making sure that the senior execs actually know that our teams are working hard and that we're delivering value, because they forget this every day, right? So every time your team ships a new feature that makes people happy, or makes an improvement to the onboarding flow that gets folks on sooner, or increases the uptake rate by people putting more stuff in your e-commerce shopping basket or whatever, I think we as product folks have to find an excuse all the time to share with the company, especially the executive team, things we're doing that matter, and we need to denominate them in money. So if we've made a change that's getting 5% more folks through the marketing funnel because we improved some kind of market technology, we helped marketing do X. By the way, marketing is the hero of that story, right? We, product and engineering, helped marketing hit their goals better, and we're part of putting another $1 million on the top line. Now we have executives paying attention to what we do because it matters, right? Second thing, and I alluded to it before, is there are no and choices. There's only or choices. So whenever we get called into an executive meeting and we think they're going to propose a new thing, we want to prep some so we're ready to answer the question of what kinds of things might we cancel or defer to make room for your thing. Because by the way, there's no excess space in the development calendar. By the way, every one of your executives believes that your development team is sitting around eating bonbons and playing Dungeons and Dragons and whatever, and or they walk through that part of the building every once in a while and they don't always see people typing, and so they conclude they're not working, right? So I try to find every opportunity to highlight that my team is fully busy on things that the executive team's already told us are important, right? And or addressing P0 system downs and bugs that are coming in, because that's what executives pay attention to. Those are the calls they get. That's the complaints they get. What else? And then one more thing. I think it's easy for execs to forget that we have a company strategy and a technology strategy and a market strategy, because they're busy and they're getting yanked in all directions and their phones ring all the time and they get a lot of complaints. So every opportunity to remind the audience that we're doing this project or product or feature or release, not just for itself, but because there's a strategy behind it. And by the way, there's 2 pieces we finished before and 4 pieces that are coming after. And these are all going to do a thing, whatever the thing is, right? They're going to, enable more customers to buy product online without having to talk to sales reps, which by the way, the sales reps aren't happy about, but the company's happy about. How do we keep endlessly reminding the executive team and the rest of the company that we do things for strategic, organized reasons, and that we're not sitting idle, I think is really critical, because otherwise they don't actually know what we do or why we're important.
All right. So want to kind of go a little bit more on that mode, but have a more specific question here.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you approach, and we're going to go beat up on sales again. How do you how do you approach taking a sales led feature wish list to a strong product lead that ensures value is being delivered? So how do you combine those 2 things together?
I think some of it's homework, right? What I expect to get from sales teams on feature lists, by the way, are one-liners, right? Slogans, make things faster, make them easier to use, right? Integrate with lots of partners. Customer asks for it, right? So, fax integration. Well, it turns out they shouldn't be using faxes at all, and the fax is a workaround for something else. And in fact, the data is in all the systems, and we could move it from system A to system B. But what they're doing is they're faxing it from office A to office B. They're rekeying it, and what they want is optical character recognition for the faxes, right? So I don't generally assume that they're the right things, but I do give them credit for their best efforts and they're trying to do the right thing. So let's separate empathy from prioritization. Every chance to tell them how important they are. They already know they're important, they're salespeople. But it helps to remind them that we understand that they bring the money into the company, because otherwise they'll tell us, right? But I would start by diving into that list and asking the outcome questions, right? So if we add that feature, how many more customers do we think are going to sign up for our product or service, right? Not what's the incremental revenue for that deal, but I'd love the names of 6 other customers. As you've told me, everybody needs this. Okay, so before we write specs, we're really going to want to talk to at least a handful of folks who say they want this, to make sure we're building the right thing and it's designed well and it's not wasted. So love to hear what other customers have said they want this, and contact names would be really easy here, because otherwise I don't know who to call, and then I have to ask you again who the people are, right? Second thing is I like to do a sort of count the digits estimation here. So even less specific than a rough guess, but is this a $1 million idea, or $100,000 idea, or a $10,000 idea? And mostly I think we could agree on that, right? Forget whether it's 200 or 300, nobody cares, right? But if we counted the digits, is it a 6-digit opportunity or an 8-digit opportunity, right? And when they say 8, you really want to ask them how they got there, because they made that up, right? And that's useful because we're going to do some estimation of effort, but here's a dirty secret. We're never going to size the bottom 85% of our backlog, right? The backlog's infinitely deep. We're never going to get there. Things are added on at the same rate or faster than we're taking them off. So if we put something in position 300 on the backlog, don't ever bother sizing it or getting the tech team to look at it, right? Nobody cares. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use this sort of arm's length, thumbs up, how many digits, to find the 3 or 4 or 6 that are worth doing a business case for and worth doing the technology assessment for. Because the other ones aren't going to make the cut anyway. Nobody cares, right? And you want to say that in a nice way, because your sales team is going to be offended. But instead of looking at the whole list and working the whole list, we might ask them, which 2 things out of this list of 18 are the 2 that you think are most likely to close deals? And then we focus on the 2 that matters. The bottom 16 of those 18, everybody's okay. I'm going to turn my camera back off here. Good. You notice how I keep bringing them back from I want, I need, to let's get to the logic, let's get to the money, let's get to the work. Because if you got 9 sales teams and they each have 20 things on this week's list, you can do the math. I'm too old to do the math, but I know I'm not doing all but 3 of those things. So let's not let them convince us to do a business case for 20 items. Complete waste.
All right. Great thoughts. And I have a little bit of a dilemma here. So this is an exclusive or as far as which question to ask next.
You just pick.
There's a couple that are directly related to what you were just talking about. So the first one I'll ask is, where do you see ownership of unit and revenue forecasting? How should product work with sales or others to create that forecast?
Yeah, divisional responsibility here. I'm a strong believer that sales cannot successfully own pricing, okay? If you let the sales team own unit prices or the discount structure or all the specials that we do where we throw in a lot of extras just because they asked for it, right? So pricing and packaging, I believe product needs to own. Otherwise, we get into this place where every customer has a snowflake, right? We've configured for our 9,000 customers, we've configured 9,000 different versions of the product. And that's unscalable, unsustainable. And salespeople will always be incented to say yes to whatever crazy collection of Chinese menu features each customer wants, including the ones we don't have. So I'm going to move pricing and packaging to price, to the product side. As far as unit forecasts, I don't think we have much control over that on the product side. We don't close the deals. We don't run marketing. We don't run sales. Sometimes there's operational or onboarding backlogs and bottlenecks, right? We don't own most of the assets that are required to sell. So I think we're a participant in that. And you know, we're going to break that out. So somebody's going to do revenue, might even be finance. I don't know who does it. We might do one, but I'm not sure we believe it. We have to sell it to folks, right? But there's usually like 2 or 3 contributors there. One is sales folks are optimists and they all believe they can sell more next quarter than last quarter. Okay, so we're going to add 10% to your target, go, right? Some of them are sort of technology or feature ads where we're going to have to justify, I think on our side, that if we do the work to add new capability X, we strongly believe and back the theory that we're going to get 10% more customers, or we're going to reduce churn by, you know, 11% or whatever, right? I'm going to paste a link in here, by the way. I wrote a piece called Business Cases Are Stories About Money. So there it is. And the takeaway here is we need to be able to do enough of a reduce tech support effort, increase cross-sell and upsell in existing customers, open up new markets, right? If we're opening up a whole new market, then probably product led and said it was a $20 million market and here's what we need, right? But notice that this is a lot less clear. Ultimately, I think sales owns the revenue number, because if sales doesn't agree to it, then they're not going to sell it. And if they don't want to sell a product that we've built, they're not going to sell it. And if they don't want our help, they're not going to take it. So ultimately, the chief revenue officer owns the number and gives me more problems than I can solve. And I negotiate with that person to pick and choose. But again, back to the initial point, I never, ever, ever, ever want to let individual sales teams or even the VP of sales create new products and prices without my sign off or my product manager's sign off, because that's how we put ourselves out of business.
All right. So the other question related to that was, so when sales is, maybe they're creating products, or at least they're pointing out some products that should be there. They like to talk about table stakes when it comes to products and features. Should we take that at face value and assume we should build those things, or how should we handle those?
I take them as face value as things that sales says are table stakes. But there's an infinite list of table stakes. Right? So if we took each of our competitors' data sheets and we dropped them into Excel and we sorted them by feature name, we're going to get 500 features that we don't have, right? Or 1,000, right? If we take every conversation that every salesperson said where any customer named something that we don't have, we're going to get another 1,000, right? So there's no bottom, there's no end to table stakes. So, you know, I think the polite and appropriate thing is to say, we will add that to a list of things that we will consider as table stakes. By the way, here's the ones at the top of our list, right? We're back into OR territory here. I always come into those meetings with the 5 things we're currently working on that we think are table stakes and my next 5, right? Because if we're at all thoughtful on the product side, my guess is that all 10 of those are more important than whatever they brought into the meeting, likely. And so now I get to ask the question of, all right, which of the 5 things that we're currently working on that you guys have all been screaming about for the last 8 years as table stakes, do you think we should postpone or delete? And if you pick one, by the way, I'm going to need to run that up all the way to the executive committee, because every other sales rep is telling me that that's a really important feature, right? And notice this is about numbers of accounts. It's not about the value of one account. It's about how many. And any one sales rep is going to be strongly incented to count their accounts as many and everybody else's they don't talk with, right? So I do find that this intersects though with the VP of sales or chief revenue officer. So I think that if I go to the VP of sales with my list, that's somebody who can make a call, because by the way, that's a person who's paid on total revenue for the company, not deal level revenue. And if this deal is so big that it dominates everything else, then we should really consider it. But the sales VP is actually going to know which sales reps are, oh, what's the nice phrase I'm looking for? Decorating the truth slightly here, right? Because your sales VP is on the pipeline call with every single one of these, knows which deals are in, knows what's happening. And so I like to give the sales VP some leverage here, not the individual sales teams. In fact, I did this experiment at a couple of companies where the sales VP had a magic bullet. Every quarter, I would give that person one engineer week for anything they wanted, one time. And if they chose wisely, they made more money. And if they chose badly, they made less money. And so that was a really good alignment of incentive, because then every sales rep who came to me, I could say, well, I'd love to do that for you, but your sales VP only gets one magic bullet this quarter. So go convince your boss that your thing is the most important one. And it really aligned all the incentives.
All right.
Right. Notice, by the way, just to finish the thought, I didn't talk about spreadsheets. I didn't talk about weightings. I didn't talk about columns. I didn't talk about ROI to 7 digits, right? By the way, ROI is good maybe to 1 digit. Everything after that's worthless. Are wasted time with a salesperson because it's against their incentives. Okay, good.
And we lost part of that last answer, so we'll keep going, but I'm sure it was some great stuff. Had another question come up. Again, how do you have any advice on how to encourage an organization to switch from an exec and sales-led product to empowering a product organization?
We're back in touchy-feely territory here, aren't we? So, you know, I think there's a couple of cases here. One is, just because we want it doesn't mean the company's going to do it, right? And generally, companies that are in this sort of sales-led model have succeeded, but at great cost. So everybody at the company outside of sales knows how broken it is, but nobody is tallying up the costs and the pain, right? And what I find is that having this discussion in theory is worthless. Telling executives that we're doing it wrong and we want to get product led doesn't make any friends, doesn't help sell the thing. So when I've been in this situation, one of the things I do first is I go back and I do some research. So let's talk to various folks on the implementation side, on the support side, on the development side, on the product side, and let's put together a list of major projects or products or releases that we dropped or didn't complete or got halfway through the MVP for some other thing. So I generally think of this as the executives don't see the impact of coming in with a new deal in the last week of the quarter that needs a thing and demanding that it be done. The pain is not obvious and we've hidden it, right? We're pretending. But if I come back and say, well, you know, 2 quarters ago, we all agreed that the most important thing for the company was better onboarding so we could add customers faster and save customer support. And here were the 2 projects that we approved and budgeted and started on last quarter. And then halfway through the quarter, we dropped both of those things because, you know, we signed a deal with JP Morgan Chase and we agreed to add teleportation to the product and we promised it by Friday, right? There's no pain in here for anyone until we go back and show them what we didn't do, right? So what that means is next quarter, we're going to be blocked on adding new customers and clients because we didn't do these two things that were going to speed up that process. And so we're going to leave 25 big accounts on the floor next quarter because we made the decision that said we're going to add a thing and it was only worth X, right? That this whole exclusive OR is a completely foreign concept to anybody who came up on the sales side. On the sales side, it's all more. It's all make more calls, it's close more deals, it's promise more things. And so for me, now some CEOs won't ever buy this. They're pure play. If I tell people to work harder, they'll work harder, they'll work weekends. This is important, that's our strategy, add more things. And then generally I drag out the employee churn numbers and I show them that they're losing 35% of the folks on the product and engineering side who give up every quarter because they can't finish anything. But for the ones who are rational, I do that. And then the other thing I do is I bring out the velocity number for sales. So velocity for sales is how fast can we add new customers and get their money, not how big the deal is. And if we could add 100 customers faster, that's going to be bigger than one big customer. And here are the projects, products, features, capabilities, whatever that we've laid out. They're going to let us add customers 20% faster with 20% less work and 20% less staff. And so we could add another 100 million to the top line if we can finish this work. Right. By the way, the only 2 times I've been fired as a head of product is right after this discussion. Because, it's a coin flip. Does your executive team really want to hear what's true? Some of you may have heard, I have a favorite phrase, gravity is not just a good idea, it's the law. But not everybody in the executive suite believes it. So, just make sure you've got some money in the bank and some job offers sometimes before you go head to head on this one.
Great advice.
Hey,
Great
I get
advice.
calls all the time from folks who are looking for the next head of product job.
All right, I'm gonna circle back to when you were talking about who owns revenue forecasting and who owns pricing. So you said product really should own pricing. So to kind of piggyback on that, do you have any suggestions for approaching pricing for a B2B SaaS product and getting sales buy-in for that pricing?
Notice those are 2 separate questions again, right? So I'm a big fan of the good, better, best, bronze, silver, gold, packaged SaaS model, right? So the more we can put our 3-ish well-defined packages that have no storage, and you get some more APIs and you get some more seats and whatever, right? But for me, the way to speed up sales is to reduce the choice set for customers and sales teams. Now, there will always be one deal at the high end that needs something special. Just give them the golden master, give them the whole product set and charge 10 million bucks for it. But what tends to slow everything down is too many options, too many choices, too many configurations. Customers get afraid that they're going to get a product that doesn't work. Sales reps end up negotiating on the individual prices for individual options, which is not about value, right? If you have, 3-ish packages, and it's not about size, it's about capabilities or use cases. So the basic package is for folks who are only going to do basic accounting, even if it's a big company. The middle package is folks who are going to do delegated authority and need multi-country accounting and have to issue a lot of 1099s and have reporting requirements to the Fed. And then the extra big package has a bunch of, super special things that only the very most intense finance teams need, right? So you should be able to look at those 3 products and their descriptions and their features and say, I belong as a customer in the silver package or the medium package based on what it does, right? Now we can talk price, we can talk discount, but everything we do to reduce the specials, reduce the options is good, right? And by the way, every time you sell professional services, you're diluting your SaaS revenue. The capital markets values are repeatable ARR SaaS at 6x. and they value professional services or custom work at 1x. So every time you take $1 for services instead of product, you're reducing the value of your company, right? Unless you must. If you must, you must. But the idea that service revenue is good is, I think, a mistake, right? SaaS is all about speed, repeatability. Everybody's on the same multi-tenant. Everybody gets the same thing. We can do 1,000 more without writing any more code. That's where money's made in the software business. Every time we go off the ranch and do something special, something custom, we're slowing the whole company down and we're costing ourselves value. Again, individual sales teams don't see that because they get paid on top line revenue for a deal. But the executive team sees that. So we have to sell that to the C-suite so that we have incentives to not do weird, crazy stuff and not do specials. My champion there is usually the chief financial officer who cares about the value of the company, not the sales reps who care about the value of the deal. All right, we got time for maybe one or two more.
Yep. We do have one more question. So
Go.
this one's going to the executive suite.
Yeah.
What are some good ways to deal with a CEO who used to be the product person, but has started to bring on product people?
Well, if it's a really small company, if you're at a 15 or 25 person company, the real answer is the CEO is still the chief product officer. So suck it up and take good direction and do your best, right? As a company gets bigger though, so at a company of, let's say, 50 or more, the CEO has a tremendous number of other things to do, right? And so I think this is a chance for, some of the product folks to gently find a moment to pull the CEO aside and say, you're busy closing sales, you're busy raising money, you're busy setting strategy, you're busy helping hire folks in all the departments, you're busy settling personnel squabbles between marketing and sales, which there always are, right? You're busy doing a lot of other things, and you're no longer in a position to really make these detailed product analyses. You have to let us do our jobs, right? That's one. The other thing, again, for somebody who wants to notice this, is to say CEOs actually get a whole different set of inputs than product folks. Mostly CEOs talk to investors and pre-sales on the very largest deals and post-sale complaints from the very largest customers. That's who gets to the CEO. So we know, and we should point out if they're product folks, they might see this, that their sampling is getting increasingly biased and sideways. And so they're only hearing from a very small subset, even though they tell us they talk to customers all day. They really only talk to the biggest partners, the biggest distributors, the biggest investors, and the biggest customers with complaints. And that's going to lead us to a place where we abandon innovation and abandon the mass market to do custom work for our 4 biggest customers. Now, they can't always hear that. Sometimes it takes 5 iterations, but those are the 2 stories I tell. But remember, we all work for the CEO. And wanting to change the CEO is different from being able to do that. Ideally, it's somebody young who can get some new thoughts in their heads. But, the last option, and I've exercised a few times, is if the CEO really wants to be the chief product officer, then in my case, they certainly don't need me. And maybe we don't need a lot of product managers. Looks like John's got a comment here. Let me see if I can find it. When is acceptable build for the biggest customers? Again, I think this is about total dollars, because anything we're building in the product stream should be for lots of customers and should be generating a lot of revenue, at least on the half that's features. The half that's tech debt and infrastructure we can't give away for deals either, or we're out of business. But I think you want to go back to the things you put on your roadmap and ask the question of how much money is this going to generate for the company over the next couple of years? And if you've done good work, some of those are big numbers, and those will be much bigger than whatever the incremental work is for the next deal. Unless it's the biggest deal in the company's history, and then, we do whatever they need.
All right. Thank you very much, Rich. I know you've got another engagement to head off to, so I want to thank you very much for tackling these questions and sharing your rich experience and history and a variety of these things. So appreciate it very much. We will get the recording posted here later on this evening, as well as any of the things you referenced in the chats as we were going through it.
Perfect. Send that on to me.
Yep.
You're in Des Moines.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye.